We render it all redundant, because Jesus says exactly what he means. He says, well, look, some people were just born like that. Some people were made eunuchs by the hand of man. Some people made themselves that, for the glory of God. This isn't easy, let anyone accept it who can. Now that seems about the most reasonable phrase on the subject of human sexuality and marriage and relationships I've heard for a long time. And yet we miss it. We can't see the wood for the trees. We get so caught up on tiny little bits of scripture which are thrown at us, spat at us, like they were weapons, that we forget to go back to the bit in the word Christian that actually makes it important, Christ. We forget to go to the Gospels, so obsessed are we by trawling through ancient Hebrew custom. You know, in Greek, marriage was about taking ownership of a woman. The word literally means take a woman. Since citizenship was passed through to one's offspring, this was considered really important and something the state had an interest in. So there were exclusions on who people might and might not marry. I think we've heard that before. And with the enactment of citizenship laws, resident aliens were taboo. You could not marry a resident alien because it would confer citizenship on somebody who was foreign, who was an outsider. And in the Oedipus stories, of course, mothers are taboo, which kind of makes sense, as are full sisters, which also makes sense. But uncles might marry nieces, and brothers might marry their half-sisters, primarily in order to keep the family property in the family. Now, we're in another one of those difficult situations where we know our own society so well that trying to understand that people before us lived utterly differently, not just slightly differently, but utterly differently, tends to make us dismiss the whole thing and say, oh, well, that has to be nonsense. It's not nonsense. They really did. You know, the reason why it's perfectly legal in the United Kingdom today to marry your cousin, your first cousin, is because half the royal family are married to their first cousins. Half the royals in Europe are related to each other. They have a gene pool the size of a thimble. There are extra fingers cropping up all over the place. The reason why Hampton Court Palace burned to the ground in the 1990s is because the Queen Mother's Barney relatives were locked up in there. Various members of the Bowes-Lyon families that were so inbred, they were completely gaga, and they put them in Hampton Court Palace. The Habsburgs, who ruled several countries in Europe for centuries, were so inbred they had a congenital deformity called the Habsburg lip. And whenever men appeared who were members of the Habsburg line, they had a lip stuck out like this. Every royal family is interrelated in Europe, except possibly the Oranje Nassaus of the Netherlands. The Queen, the present Queen, God bless her, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, the man she married, Prince Philip, was the heir to the Greek throne. He's actually also her cousin, because they were all Hanoverian German royals. This is just going back 100 years, you know, when this was just common. Go back a little further, and you get places like Hawaii, where the king and queen invariably marry their sisters and their brothers in order to keep it in line. The Egyptians marry very close relatives as well. You know, many of our modern taboos are very recent indeed. Very recent indeed. And I think by understanding that, we begin to do this in reverse so that we understand that many of the things that we assume about the ancient world, no, it's not good enough just to assume it. We really do have to find out what was going on. So we're nearly there, don't worry. Because I don't want to so put you off the subject that you don't come to the course. But let's look at how it started in Greece. Well, Cecrops, who was one of the early kings of Athens, was also believed to be not entirely human. He was half god and half man. Now that's another one of those things where we say, oh, that's nonsense. It can't have been true. But remember that most of the Egyptian pharaohs were considered to be gods, the Roman emperors were considered to be gods, and this brings into mind another one of those passages which is used against us. There's a passage in the New Testament which talks about the people of Sodom, the women of Sodom going after strange flesh. And of course, to a modern American hearing that, or a modern Westerner who translated it in the last 100 years, oh, well, we know what strange flesh is, don't we? It's people of the same sex. It's actually angels. The story was, the belief was, that the women of the city of Sodom slept with angels. And actually, it turns out that the ancient Hebrews had a long-running obsession with the horrors of sleeping with heavenly beings. They should have gone to the Colorado or the Western States. Apparently, people are always being plucked up into spaceships and being interfered with over there. I should imagine in Arkansas they have a horror of sex with heavenly beings as well. The fact is that it's a strange world. It's only become familiar just very recently. It's a really peculiar world. So don't take anything anybody tells you just on face value. This Bible that we cherish and that we love is too important. It deserves our study. It deserves us not just to use our hearts on it, but just to use our spirits and our intellects as well. It's not good enough. It's not good enough just to say, God hates homosexuals. Come on, we're not small children. It's not good enough either to say God hates this or God hates that because we happen to dislike it. No, we really do have to do better than that. Because us not doing better than that has resulted in, a whole list of different groups. Some of them, the majority of the human race, being oppressed and being punished and suffering and having that same good news taken away from them for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So please, look at what I've said. I have some posted on the website as well on the Bible and homosexuality with some good core information about it. And I'm going to be putting out a booklet which will go with the course. So take a good look at it. And then tell me what you think. Don't tell me before you've done your own research.